The morning sun rose over the bustling city, but its warmth seemed to skip one corner of the busy street. There, on a patch of cracked pavement, sat a frail beggar whose life had become an endless routine of waiting, hoping, and being ignored. His clothes were nothing more than torn rags stitched together by desperation. Dust clung to his skin, and his hair hung in unkempt strands over his tired eyes. He stretched out a trembling hand, palm open, as if pleading silently with the world to notice him. Around him, the city never stopped moving. Shoes clicked briskly on the pavement, vendors shouted prices of fresh fruit and vegetables, and children laughed as they tugged at their parents' hands. Yet, the beggar remained invisible. Some people glanced at him with pity, some with irritation, and most didn't look at all. A few coins clinked into his palm from the more generous passers-by, but they were rare and never enough. The beggar muttered under his breath, words that carried the weight of years of disappointment. Why is life so cruel? Why must I live like this, when others walk by with full bellies and fine clothes? His voice cracked, as though even his spirit had grown weary of hearing the same lament repeated daily. He sighed heavily, curling his shoulders inward, as if trying to shrink from the indifference of the world. The smell of roasted peanuts and fresh bread wafted from nearby stalls, tormenting his empty stomach. He watched a little boy bite into a hot pastry, crumbs falling onto the pavement. For a fleeting moment, the beggar wished the boy would drop the whole piece so he could snatch it quickly. But the boy clutched it tightly, his laughter ringing in the air, a sound that reminded the beggar of a life he once dreamed of but had long forgotten. His gaze drifted to his tin can resting beside him, holding only a few dull coins. He picked one up and studied it, as though searching for answers in its metallic shine. "This is my fate," he whispered, convincing himself that nothing would ever change. He leaned back against the cold wall, watching the river of people flow endlessly by, while he remained an unmoving rock, stuck in the same place, unseen, unwanted, and unheard. In that moment, his world was defined by hopelessness. He believed he was a prisoner of poverty, not realizing that the strongest chains were not around his body, but in his mind. The day dragged on as it always did. The beggar sat slumped in his usual spot, the noise of the street fading into a dull hum in his ears. His hand still stretched outward, waiting, though his heart no longer expected kindness. The sky had begun to shift into a soft orange hue as the sun prepared to set, painting the city with a tired glow. The beggar was ready to curl into himself for another hungry night when something unusual happened. Someone stopped. A man, neatly dressed in a clean shirt and polished shoes, stood before him. Unlike the others, he did not hurry past with a glance of pity or scorn. Instead, he crouched down to meet the beggar's eyes. There was no mockery in his expression, only calmness and a quiet strength. "Why do you sit here every day?" the stranger asked gently. The beggar, startled, blinked. No one had ever bothered to ask him that. "Because I have nothing," he muttered, bitterness coating his words. "What else can a man like me do? This is my fate. People give me coins, and I survive." The stranger shook his head slowly. "No, this is not survival. This is surrender." His voice was firm, but not unkind. The beggar frowned, unsure how to respond. The stranger pointed toward a fruit seller across the road, a cheerful man arranging bright oranges in a wooden cart. Children tugged at their mother's sleeves, begging to buy some. Customers exchanged coins, and the fruit seller's face lit up with every sale. "Do you see him?" the stranger asked. "Yes," the beggar said quietly. "That man started with nothing too. But he decided not to beg. He chose to offer something, however small. People respect effort. They respect value. If you sit here with an open hand, they will only see a burden. But if you stand with something to give, they will see a man." The beggar's chest tightened. The words pierced deeper than he expected. His whole life, he had thought of himself as powerless, as someone to whom the world owed pity. No one had ever suggested that he could create his own worth. The stranger stood, brushing the dust from his trousers. "Remember this, your poverty is not just in your pocket, it is in your mind. Change your mindset, and your life will change." And with that, he walked away, leaving the beggar frozen, staring at the fruit cart across the street, his heart stirring with a thought that felt new, strange, and frighteningly possible. What if I try? That night, the beggar could not sleep. The stranger's words replayed in his mind again and again. Your poverty is not just in your pocket, it is in your mind. Change your mindset, and your life will change. He tossed on the cold pavement, staring at the stars, his stomach aching with hunger but his thoughts louder than his emptiness. For the first time, instead of blaming fate, he wondered, what if the man was right? At dawn, as the city stirred awake, the beggar made a decision. With the few coins he had collected, he approached a fruit vendor who was arranging baskets of bananas and oranges. Nervously, he whispered, "Can you spare me a few pieces to sell? I will return with your share." The vendor studied his desperate yet determined face and, after a pause, handed him a small handful. "Prove yourself," the vendor said. Clutching the fruits as if they were treasures, the beggar chose a spot not far from his old corner. But instead of stretching out his hand for alms, he stood tall, though trembling, and called out shyly, "Fresh fruit. Sweet and ripe." At first, people ignored him, just as they always had. His voice shook, his palms sweated, and doubt gnawed at him. "Maybe I am a fool," he thought. Then, a woman stopped. She looked at him, not as a beggar, but as a seller. She picked up 2 bananas, handed him a few coins, and smiled. "Thank you," she said warmly. The beggar's heart leapt. For the first time in years, he had earned, not begged, for money. As the day went on, more customers came. Some recognized him as the man who once begged on the corner, but instead of scorn, they offered encouragement. "Good for you," one man said as he bought an orange. The beggar's confidence grew. By evening, every fruit was gone, and for the first time in a long time, he went to sleep not just with a full stomach but with dignity. Weeks turned into months. The beggar was no longer a beggar, he was a vendor, then a small shopkeeper. His clothes grew cleaner, his smile brighter. Each coin he earned carried the weight of pride, not shame. One evening, as he closed his stall, he looked up at the sky and whispered with gratitude, "The man was right. When I changed my mindset, my life changed." And in that simple truth, his story became a powerful reminder to all who passed by: change begins within.